How to win vegan arguments. People hit me up all the time being like, yo Ryuji, this person told me this, what do I say? How do I win this argument? And that's the topic I want to talk about today, because every time that someone hits me up like that, I think to myself, well, these are the facts to kind of argue against that. But at the same time, that's not at all the approach that I personally use when I talk to people. This is going to be a video about not what to do, but rather where to come from in those situations, because the place that you come from in life always dictates the actions that you're going to take, and that in turn creates the results that you create. So I always think that before we think about what are the arguments, what are the facts, what are the actual words that I'm going to say, it's important to think about and be aware of where we are coming from, who we are being in those situations. And I want to talk about that by referencing a book called Crucial Conversations. And actually, I want to make this into a bigger series that I don't actually know what I'm going to call this, but I might call it something like the Vegan Book Review or Vegan Activist Book Reviews. Doesn't really matter. But the point is, I want to talk about different books that have supported me in my journey and that continue to support me in my journey, as I'm always growing. I'm not the best activist in the entire world by any stretch of the imagination. But these are just some resources that I have used to help me become the best activist that I can be, and I want to share that with you. So what is this book all about? The book Crucial Conversations is about having conversations in emotional situations. The book talks about it in contexts like, for example, a relationship where sometimes you get triggered and you get into fights, whether it be a close friendship, whether it be a romantic relationship. Perhaps you relate to, just being really emotional in situations where you maybe shouldn't be and you end up hurting the other person. Similarly, it talks about it in situations like business relationships where a business is at stake, or where actual finances are at stake, and how to have effective conversations where people listen to each other and things actually move forward. Now, I think this is perfect for outreach because I understand how it can be triggering when people don't listen to us. Because in our mind, we're just like, I'm presenting you with facts here, I'm telling you the truth, and instead of listening to me, you choose not to listen and you choose to justify exploiting animals. So I definitely understand how that can be very frustrating. That being the case, what I always think about is, how can I be effective in those moments? I don't think activism is about being right, it's about being effective. It's about creating change, not feeling good that you spoke up for the animals, or you spoke out with the truth. What I want to talk about is two of the main points that the book makes, which is about how to have effective conversations. The first one is always maintaining a relationship of respect. See, when you're talking to someone, one of the foundational elements of having a conversation where you actually listen to each other, where actually change is possible, is mutually respecting each other. If you don't feel respected, or if the other person doesn't feel respected, it's very hard for actual listening to go on. It's very hard for people to be changed by that type of conversation. Now, don't get me wrong. Anything works at some point in some context, and I definitely know that some people have been changed by being shamed into being vegan. That's, for example, the case of my friend Jane Velez Mitchell. But in the majority of cases, what I found is that when you actually have a relationship with someone where that person feels like I care about them, I feel like they care about me, and it's not just feeling about caring about each other, it's actually caring, actually listening, the conversation goes much better. So how can you do this? A really easy way to do this is to simply listen to the other person. So many times I've been at Cubes of Truth or outreach events where I see other people doing outreach and I see them cutting people off all the time. People start talking, they start making their points, and the outreacher is just quick to cut them off with facts. Now, you have to understand that, from our perspective, again, this might feel like we're just speaking the truth, we're educating them, but think about what that must feel like from the other person's point of view, where you're just trying to express something that just popped into your mind, and next thing you know, someone is just cutting you off. Obviously, you're not going to feel listened to, and what happens when you don't feel listened to, you're not inclined to listen to the other person first. See, anything that you want to get out of the conversation from the other person, you have to give it first. What I found is that when I'm open, the other person tends to be open. When I come from a loving place, the other person tends to come from a loving place. When I come from a non-judgmental place, the other person tends to be non-judgmental as well. Whatever kind of conversation you want to create with someone else, it's up to you to create that. I don't think it's good enough to rely on the other person to be open. I think it's up to us to bring that first. So one, always keep a relationship of mutual respect. The second thing is creating win-win situations. Now, there are many ways that we can view this, but the way that I like to see it in my mind is being collaborative as opposed to being competitive. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the video when I talked about arguing. It's interesting because sometimes I see that people come to me and they're like, how do I argue against this? What is the argument to win this? How can I win in this situation? And just think about what place that comes from. As soon as you're thinking in terms of winning, you're thinking in competitive terms. You're thinking in terms of how can I beat you? But what Crucial Conversation talks about, and what I found, is that a better place to come from is how can we create something together? How can I be on your team? When I'm having outreach conversations, to the best of my ability, I always think about, okay, how can I make sure that I'm on the same team as you? How can we collaborate on something and create something beautiful together? See, I don't look at it as, yo, you don't believe me right now, you don't want to see the truth, and so I'm gonna prove you wrong. I don't look at it like that at all. Rather, I think about, what are you interested in? What are the things that might resonate with you? Where are you coming from? What are the stories that you tell yourself about you? What are your worldviews? And how can I tell you a story that aligns with that? I try to figure out where that person is in their life. Maybe they have companion animals, maybe they have certain health problems, maybe they're an environmentalist, whatever it is. It might not even be closely related to that, but it might show me what kind of person that person is. And that's where the first part of this video really comes in handy, which is listening. When you actually listen to people from an open space, you get to know what type of people are, and from there you can talk about what's going to resonate with them. For example, one time I was sitting in a plane doing outreach with my next door neighbor, and talking to him for a while, I found out that he works for this government agency that deals with security. And talking to him more, I realized that, hey, this guy actually really cares about justice. He really cares about creating a fair world. Furthermore, I talked to him and I found that he had a lot of animals at his house, and he even told me that, hey, you know what? I want to show my kids all these animals and live around animals so that they learn to respect animals. And when I really listened to him, I was able to dig up all this information about him that then I was able to use, not against him, but when I was talking to him, I would use that information to basically convey my message in a way that would resonate with him. For example, since he was dealing with a lot of criminal cases and stuff like that, we talked about how slaughterhouse workers are more likely to go into things like crime, domestic violence, and how it's a lose for them. Talks about, well, do you think that if you're showing your kids all these animals, perhaps you think that they should learn how to love farm animals as well? And I was able to create a win-win situation where he cared about raising his kids in an environment where they cared about animals, and I was like, well, this is something that might support you to raise your kids in the way that you want to raise your kids. If you care about justice and fairness in this world, then maybe this is something that you should care about, because this is something that's going to create fairness and justice in this world. Do you see how the place that I'm coming from in a situation like that is completely different from how can I prove you wrong? How can I win this argument? Because ideally, at the end of an outreach conversation, I don't want it to be so that I win and that person loses. I want it so that we both win. So that that person is like, you know what? I learned something new today. I found something. I found a piece of information that is actually going to support me in living the life that I want to live. That's the whole point of outreach. And so, to me, when people feel like they're arguing against someone, it's not so much that they don't have the right arguments. It's more that there's something else that's missing in the conversation. There's a relationship of respect that's missing. There's a collaborative frame that's missing in the conversation. So, to cap this off, I want you to think about when you're talking to people, when you're having outreach conversations, or you're talking to someone, say, on Facebook Messenger, through DMs, on comments, where are you coming from? In your mind, do you assume that people are not open, that they're not going to listen to you, that you have to win and they have to lose? Or are you assuming that people are open? Are you coming from an open place first? Are you making them win? Do you actually care about people and respecting people so that you can create a relationship of respect? Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to read more about these concepts, I definitely encourage you to read the book Crucial Conversations. It's an incredible book. I really learned a lot from it, and I think every activist should read this book because there's so many concepts that would really support you and have supported me in my outreach conversations. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video too, definitely let me know in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this kind of series where I talk about different books, and I'll make more of them. If there's anything else you want me to make a video about, definitely let me know. In any case, have an incredible rest of your day wherever you are. I'll see you next time, and peace.